You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Hi, I'm Doug Draper, and with me is my friend and co-host Pete Mento. I'd like to welcome you to Global Trade This Week. Global Trade This Week is brought to you by COUNTERFEIT Logistics. First of all, this is the only online news show that really focuses on international trade, transportation, and we'll sprinkle in some economics. We'll be coming to you weekly with segments that we bring to the table, and we'll have some guests that will join us. The show is forward-thinking in the sense that we're not going to talk about what has happened. We're going to give you insight on what's moving forward. So without further ado, we have four topics for you again this week. And Pete, let's have you kick it off. Topic number one.
Thanks a lot, Doug. And this week's first topic is very timely in that it's been causing a lot of disruption to the American import community. It would seem that over probably the past 6 weeks, we've had a lot of seizures by customs for product that is related or directly being made by forced labor. Forced labor is a nice way of saying that the product is being manufactured by people who simply don't want to do it. And the category for this is pretty broad. It can be folks that are being imprisoned and asked to make products. It could be people who are literally being forced in some format of slavery. But the idea and the concept has been in place for a very long time. You can imagine that all of the products that we're talking about are coming from China, which leads to the suspect nature of this sudden enforcement. When President Clinton back in the 90s had asked for China to ascend into the World Trade Organization, this was one of the main factors that was holding back their ascension. The idea that a lot of Chinese products could be made in an environment that was less than fair to the people who were manufacturing it. What I find very interesting is that we've known that these manufacturing places, that these manufacturing sites were probably using this type of labor for some time, but we're just suddenly now deciding to create the moral high ground and go after these manufacturers. So it's a little bit scary to me, Doug, because there are a lot of people who are importing things who don't really know where product is coming from. But on the other side of that ledger, there are a lot of very strong American companies who have really impressive social responsibility compliance programs who are being surprised at seeing their products being seized. I think this is going to be something that we see in the American business world for some time. I think this is going to be, I hate to use the term new normal because I can't stand it, but I think this is going to be one of the new normal that a lot of companies who have never dealt with this are going to have to start dealing with.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it sounds like it's always been there and it's just becoming more prevalent, or we're just deciding once and for all to kind of take a look underneath the blanket, right? Because obviously this just didn't appear out of nowhere. So is it why all of a sudden the interest in like I said, pulling the onion back?
Yeah, I can't get a straight answer. So I called a couple of friends of mine at Customs and I asked them direct questions about it. As you can imagine, they were not real open to talking about it. It doesn't shock anybody. But you get this feeling, you can sort of jump to the conclusion that a lot of this has to do with the ongoing trade war with China. And this is just another way to cause a lot of hate and discontent on the other side of that argument. I agree with you. We've known it's been going on a long time. Why now? And it bothers me, that it's just smacks of politics when maybe we should have been trying to help these people all along. Not that I'm going to sit here and get into bleeding heart politics. I don't like talking about politics when I do this stuff. But this is a question of if we should have been doing this all along and why suddenly now. I think there's some people who probably would love to have that answer other than me. And very few people have the answer, and I doubt we're ever going to get it from them. But what's important is that people realize that they're being held to a new standard, Doug. And that new standard is going to require them to know more than ever about what's going on in their manufacturing sites in China.
Yeah. I could see a lot of companies getting caught up in the wake, so to speak. Let's say you make a widget and you've always purchased it and sourced it from this factory that had these horrific practices and procedures that you just weren't aware of. And all of a sudden, we'll just say my pen here is being sourced, forced labor. I didn't even know about it. Is there any implications to an importer? Like, I made mention on my last show that didn't end very well with, ask for forgiveness, not permission. But hey, I'm not trying to do anything wrong. I'm just trying to make a buck and import my product. Is there any retribution or retaliation to companies that are just unaware?
Yeah, that's what scares me a great deal here, Doug, is do you really think that a lot of these companies know that they're buying things? I don't think that they do. I was a
Well,
comedian. I was a professional stand-up comedian, right? And I have a lot of very dear friends that are having their entire livelihoods, that are having their careers destroyed simply through accusation. All it takes now, without any proof whatsoever, is society and the public deciding that someone's entire career needs to be burned to the ground simply because someone has accused them of going against the grain and saying things that aren't necessarily politically correct. And then they're forced to walk themselves back out of it, aren't they? Right? They're forced to
mhm.
find some way to bring themselves back out of this problem. And that's what I'm worried about, is that good companies that really have never had an issue with this are going to find themselves on the front page of the news, or being attacked by Twitter for something that they probably never knew about, probably couldn't have had any hand in. But that should give them more of a reason than ever to be actively engaged, to do the right thing, and to find out if they can find another source for this, or see if the people they're working with are using questionable practices. I think that's probably the best look forward for them. Now,
Yeah.
I know you've got some great
Well, let's hope.
topics. You were kind enough to send them to me ahead of time, which I, of course, did not do for you because I'm awful. So you sent me notes, you
Yeah.
sent me everything. I'm all kinds of prepared for you today. I dressed up like an adult for this episode. So
Yeah.
you got some great topics. And what's the first one this week, Doug?
Yeah. So mine, I'm kind of going back to the theme of the holiday season, and this is more about the growth of white glove services, and white glove meaning, hand carry, coming and making things not only delivered to the doorstep where the Amazon delivery guy will take a picture of it, text it to you, and make sure your shipment was delivered, but more of taking things into and over the threshold. And really, I kind of put those in two categories. There's the business to business white glove, and that's going into obviously businesses and setting up, let's say, medical equipment, um, retail to some degree. I'm talking about kiosks and things that are operational within in a store, and not so much anymore, but the hospitality and the hotel industry. I need somebody to take something into my space, set it up, make sure it works right, and then get out of there, get rid of the debris and hit the road. So the B2B white glove service, I think, is great. It's great business. It's profitable, but unfortunately, that, in my opinion, is waning for some of the reasons I had just made mention to. The piece that is growing is the direct to consumer, right? Just like anything else, the changing buying habits of the consumer. And my take on the thing, and I'm just going to shoot you straight, Pete, in my opinion, it's garbage. Those type of deliveries that are out there and the expectations of the companies and what you're required to do with the dollar amount that you're going to get compensated for, is unbelievable. It just doesn't jive. So even though direct to consumer white glove services are increasing, I'm finding that it's very challenging for even multinational companies wrapping their heads around it. To give you a perspective, being here in Colorado, there's been inquiries where we've had people say, hey, can you drive to Steamboat? It's 3 hours away and you drive over 2 mountain passes, right? 10,000 feet. And can you pick this up because they want it returned? And oh, by the way, it's on the 4th floor of a condo that's at the base area of the ski resort, and then bring it back and put it on a pallet and ship it to me. Well, okay. Oh, and by the way, we'll pay you $75 to do that. I mean, it's insane. And in my opinion, what's transpired is that these large, multinational companies want to have one rate structure that covers the entire country, which I get. It's like, hey, it's X pennies or X cents per pound to make this delivery, but the nuances of how everything is in the country just doesn't jive. There's nobody in their right mind can drive 6 hours over 2 mountain passes, pick something up inside of a residence, put it on a pallet and ship it back for $75. It doesn't happen. So even though that segment is growing, I just don't see how it's going to be sustainable. And either people are just no longer going to pay for it, they're going to pay through the roof for it, or you can continue to have companies that try to make it happen and slowly go out of business because they just cannot operate in a 6-hour day for $75. I don't know. Have you bought anything recently that has to go into your house?
I think you're really onto something, Doug. This is one of those problems that we really haven't put enough thought into. And I'm wondering if the market is going to find a way to deal with it, or if consumers are going to, like you said, get fed up with it. I remember when I worked for one particular forwarder, we didn't do that kind of retail. We didn't do that kind of retail for exactly the reason that you mentioned. It is so high value, meaning that the customer has such high expectations. A consumer, a home consumer, the expectations are over the top. They're over the moon for what they want for the money that they spent. And they have no way to gauge that against any other past experiences. All they know is that they want it delivered. They want their Peloton exercise bike on the 5th floor of their house. They want it set up, delivered. They want it all put together. And they figure that $100 they paid is going to cover it. And then the second half of that is, I remember walking through a warehouse of the exact opposite type of freight forwarder. And there were all of these mattresses just stacked up all over the place. And I said, what are these? And they said, we have 3 different of these online .com mattress companies that have I think it was a 100-day guarantee that you can sleep on this mattress. And if you don't like it, you can return it in 100 days. So people were buying what they're going to sleep on, which seems absurd, having it delivered to their home, set up, and then if they didn't like it in 100 days, they had it brought back. And then what happens to them? They sit in a warehouse until someone comes to pick them up, apparently, and destroy them. The value on that, the expectation of the freight forwarder, of the transportation provider, is ridiculous. The space that it takes up, the amount of time and energy that goes into it. On the other side of that, on the B2B side, you and I have both seen project forwarding and the project needs of a company, how far in detail they'll go. Companies pay for that. There's an expectation that your client knows when they have something miserable, like I got to switch out a telephone switching computer on one day. I'm bringing all my engineers down, and the phone system for some operating system in Africa is going to be closed for an hour while we do it. So it's got to be done, yada, yada. We all know that there's going to be a payday on that because it's got to be done right. And if someone screws it up, it's going to be cataclysmic. I don't think that the B2C consumer environment understands how complicated that is. And I think the only way they're going to learn is through a decade of having to deal with it.
Yeah.
I don't imagine we're going to be able to teach them anyway easily. But I agree with you. The B2B stuff. Another forwarder I worked for. God, I've had a lot of jobs, man. Another forwarder I worked for. One of the side businesses that they had was doing exactly what you talked about, going into retail and restaurant environments, like switching out entire drink machines in 500 restaurants over a long weekend. And the amount of work it took to do that, I was always really impressed, not only at the way the company did it, but the amount of effort that went into it. I don't think that we as consumers understand how hard that is, but the businesses did. And they understood there was going to be a cost for that. Didn't mean they didn't negotiate these guys into the ground. But I think you really touched on something here. The expectation of the consumer who is just used to clicking on Amazon Prime and getting practically anything in 48 hours is totally out of line with reality. And when it comes to something. One last thing I'll say, because this cracked me up. I moved in a new place. I ordered a bunch of furniture when I first got here, and it was junk. So I ordered some new furniture, and I realized I didn't have an armoire. Isn't that a beautiful word, armoire?
Yeah, spell it, please.
I ordered one. Oh, please, yeah. I ordered one, and it showed up, and it was some assembly required. I hired somebody on one of these, TaskRabbit, I think it was, to come put it together for me for $75. Because I knew, as much as I love to use my hands and I love playing around with that stuff, that the $75 I paid this person to spend, I think it was 2 hours and altogether putting it together, was better than me spending a Saturday putting it together, maybe not being happy doing it. But I found out the next day that the people I ordered it from would have sent somebody for $50 to do it for me. And now there's this new show that Tim Allen has where he and the guy that played his sidekick on Tool Time, I can't remember his name. They're doing a reality show where they're buying stuff and putting it together with the instructions. And I guess it's going to be hysterical, but that's what I see. It's so difficult and so hard. There is a reality show that's going to be hysterical about, a regular guy trying to put it together with power tools. And there's a whole industry that's been caught up alongside of it. So I'm blown away from that.
Yeah. I think you're right. It's going to be years before something shakes out. It'll be interesting. So anyway, we'll put that topic to bed and let's go on to topic number 3. I think this one's yours. Go for it.
I love how Doug says we'll put that topic to bed. I think that's a nice way of saying, I think you've talked enough, Pete. So let's have Pete talk some more. Topic number 3. I have 3 projects on this right now with my little independent consulting firm that's dealing with counterfeits. Counterfeit is, when you say it to the normal person at a party, what do you think about counterfeit goods? Their mind immediately goes to fake watches, fake purses, fake sneakers. But that's not even the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. You've got everything from software to very high-end pharmaceuticals. If you look into the olive oil industry in America, fascinating documentaries have been done. An amazing 60 Minutes piece was done on how much of the olive oil that comes into America is actually counterfeit. So the very high-end virgin olive oils that we all eat, they're not actually the olive oils that we bought. I have an Italian passport. I used to go to Italy a lot before COVID. And one of the joys of my life was having a salad with just some simple olive oil on it, because the flavor of it, I can't even put into words to you how beautiful it is. I can't buy that olive oil easily in this country. And when I do find it, I immediately assume that it's fake. The billions and billions and billions of dollars that we lose here in industry because of these is staggering. Customs also, along with the labor stuff, has gotten really aggressive on the fake stuff coming into America. And you had swapped some notes with me because you're, like I said, a much better co-host than I am. A big part of this has to do with de minimis and the fact that so much of American commerce now to the customer is coming in duty free under these de minimis entries, and customs only has so many people. They can only inspect so much, so things are going to slip. They're also using intelligent tools and software to catch people. They're using investigations to catch people, and they're getting really good at it. But also, not enough credit is being given to 3 particular groups. First, the freight forwarding industry. The freight forwarding and logistics and carrier industry know that the best thing they can possibly do is be on the lookout and do the right thing to not let this happen on their watch. I don't think that integrated carriers and the U.S. Postal Service, I know for a fact, big freight forwarders and small freight forwarders, they don't want their name associated with this type of law breaking. The second group are the importers themselves and the sellers, the Amazons, the Alibabas, the whomever of the world. They don't want to be the company who has their name associated with this type of law breaking, because people want to know that when they buy their goods that they're legitimate. And the third group is really the law enforcement agencies, who are doing everything they can with so little. I think the best way to manage this really comes down to all 3 of these groups getting together and coming up with a almost CT Pat if it worked-esque attitude of creating a program that is really a management industry, trade industry, government partnership that takes the best of everything that we are and sorts it out. It's not a perfect solution, but I think if they work together, we're going to get a lot more than if they worked apart.
Yeah. No, I think the collaboration is key. The challenge I see on that is, okay, so you got these 3 entities collaborating and I'm a visual person, so let's picture a gigantic stack of paperwork of potential violations, and they push it across the table, and they say, hey, Uncle Sam, look at all of these potential violations that we just discovered. Here you go. Go chase them. Go catch them. There's not enough resources to do that. I'm not negating that they shouldn't collaborate to provide those, but I could see a big challenge with, there's just not enough time in the day and not enough resources to track down 5,000 entries through the new de minimis rule that just kind of fall through the cracks. So maybe some big boys and you knock a couple of home runs out of the park, which is going to make news, right? Which may, help it a little bit. But I just think that there's so much fraud out there and so much counterfeiting that we don't even know about, that once we get in some visibility, the next question is, well, what the hell are we going to do with it? And then you'd go, let's say you identify the company. Here's the source manufacturer in China. Let's go get them. How do you do that, right? They could disappear overnight. I'm sure the company that you're purchasing the product from or your manufacturer may be 3 levels removed from whom actually is controlling the counterfeit nature of it. And then you're chasing yourself in the circles. So I applaud everybody for having an awareness and a collaboration, but I'm just afraid that there's not enough tangible activity that's going to happen whenever all of those things are identified.
Yeah, I feel like I'm on a presidential debate because I don't want to interrupt you when I have so many points I want to jump.
Well, when you lower your head and you start shaking your head, I know I'm in trouble.
No, there's no trouble. I think we agree on a lot of stuff. What's working out well is when you have the 5,000 entries of counterfeit goods. The first thing you have to keep in mind is a high-end shoe retailer like Nike or Adidas, whichever way you're supposed to say it. They want these folks to get caught. They desperately want these guys to get caught because they're eroding the value of their brand. So if they find out from one of these secondary resellers or whomever that someone's doing it, they're going to hand it over. If the government finds it and they find patterns, the government is not a bunch of gumshoes out there with, twirling their nightsticks, walking up and down on the beat at night. This is the 1940s police in a movie. These guys have some pretty technical, highly technical tools that they use where they find patterns in the way that people are selling things and patterns in the way that people are shipping things around the world. And as such, they're using those patterns to develop a type of accountability for their counterparts overseas to get engaged to help deal with enforcement. Where I've always seen this is it's the same as going after the drug user for the crime, when you probably ought to be going after the source with even more aggressiveness than you are after the person who's consuming the goods. The use of software and the use of technical processes is probably going to get you farther. Where I had a conversation with a good friend of mine this morning who's big in the security world. And what he kept talking about was what happens when this stuff starts happening to the vaccines for COVID? What happens when someone steals a truckload of COVID vaccines, puts it in the right temperature controls, and sends it to some place, God knows where a bunch of scientists then reverse engineer it, make their own, and start selling it under the same auspices and names of these huge pharmaceutical companies out of the back of a pickup truck somewhere. And now you've got people who are going to say, I had the same vaccine as, name whatever pharmaceutical company who made it, and I had a heart attack, or my father died, or my mother's dead, and now their name is mixed up in it. That is an absolute nightmare scenario. So how do we manage and contain that? I don't know, other than the smart ways that pharmaceutical companies try to engage with it. So we have to remember this innovation economy. One of the most important things that we do is we control our intellectual property. We control the smarts and we control the technology so that we don't let it get in the hands of people who are going to stick it to us like this. But I think you're right. You stop one, another one pops up down the street or in the same building, making the same thing. Yep. And
yeah,
you end up, the criminals are smarter than we are sometimes because the need to consume it is just so big with the pharmaceuticals and the makeup and everything else.
Yeah, it's daunting. It's like whack-a-mole out there, but the fact of the the vaccines that are coming down the road, that is just stop you in your tracks with that potential scenario. I'm going to jump in. I'm taking topic 4.
Please.
I'm taking it back from you, Pete. Is that all right? Now
Absolutely.
I'm going to use an acronym for this one, and I don't want you to get too excited, okay? Because it's called BOPIS, BOPIS. Now, I know your mind immediately goes to the 1980s and either a hair band or a speed metal band. So it's not, you're thinking of Crocus, right? Not BOPIS. But BOPIS is buy online, pick up in store, BOPIS. And I think that you're going to see a lot of that type of business growing. And I really think there's a couple things. Number one, the patience level of the consumer out there is waning more and more. Yes, 2-day free shipping is amazing, but you're telling me I have the ability to get it in 2 hours and I have to get in my car to go a couple miles to pick it up? All right, I think I'll do that. And you still have the endless aisle, which is a term been used to say I can shop for anything I want anywhere, but then you individually have the control of when you can get it in your hands, because the technology is there that if you want to buy bread bowls, you could get it at your Target store, your other retailer store right down the street. You don't have to wait. So I think number one, people are just they don't want to wait. I think the other thing is the shipping fees, based on the other topic I spoke about, are going to start creeping up a little bit. So maybe I can go buy my Peloton and go pick it up, and I can save the hassle factor of 2 days and some guy coming in my house and making a mess. So I'm just going to go pick it up. Maybe I need to get out and go buy some other products at the store. So I'll get my milk, my eggs, and I'll pick up my Peloton at the store. So I think that's a big deal. And buy online, pick up in store is really going to grow. And I think that's going to be something we'll see quite a bit in the next 2 to 3 years. I don't know. Have you ever done that before, Pete? You got in there to pick anything up from the store that you ordered?
Yeah, I have. I've done it in a couple instances. I've done it to pick up parts for my motorcycle. I've done it to pick up electronics. So pick up new headphones, stuff for the podcast, where Best Buy or whatever has what I need, but Amazon says it'll be here in 3 or 4 days. Jump on my Jeep, go down, pick it up, bring it home. Right. So I get all that. My problem with all of this is the fact that I am a rapidly aging, balding, and graying Yankee curmudgeon. And I have a problem with this, going back to when my dad would say, when we went from having people who checked you out at the grocery store to my dad would start, or now I do this. We would walk up towards the line to check out on our own, and the person would say, "Would you like to use our self-checkout?" And my dad would say, "No, I want the checkout person to do it." Now I find myself doing that. How much of your job am I going to have to do? How much of your job do I have to replace because this is saving you money? And that's really where this gets to me. You're telling me that your retail is basically nothing more now than a giant warehouse that if I feel like it, I can walk into and take a look at what you've got and buy on my own, or I can look at what's in your warehouse, I can drive up and you'll have somebody come out and bring it to me in my car. Okay, so effectively, I've done all the shopping. I've checked out myself, and I'm going to drive to the store and you're going to bring it to me. There's no way that this has not made the experience cheaper for you. There is no way that you are not saving money. I have to believe, because you were doing this before COVID, that this somehow made this more profitable for you. Where is that showing up in savings for me? I think when someone creates transparency in the transaction and says that we are going to adjust our prices accordingly to the fact that we are undergoing a change in the way that we sell in retail, because we have to, we're gonna have to evolve or we're gonna die, then I'm gonna feel a little better about it. Stop telling me that you're doing me a favor by operating this way, because I don't think you are. I think you're doing your shareholders a favor. God bless you. We all love the shareholders, but just be honest with me about it. I'm tired of everyone saying that this is for my convenience, when the only thing convenient about it is it's convenient for the people who work there.
Yeah, that's a good point, but that's just how things are going. I think the key thing there is the intangible savings of $1, right? You're not saying how much money did I spend on gas to go 20 miles down. How much time that I personally waste and what's the value of my time to money. A lot of times I would have spent $17 to have this ship and I didn't do that. So I saved $17, where all the other intangible savings that may not rack up, but people just don't really approach things that way. But I tell you what, Pete, I'm a big believer. BOPIS.
All right. Well, can I break in with one more question about that? So we are near the end of October, right? We're coming to November, and with November comes the holiday retail season. We're still in the middle of a pandemic, and I've got a real question about this. Is Black Friday going to be eclipsed by the Cyber Monday, or is everybody that we know on Thursday night after they eat their turkey gonna jump in their car and drive on down to whatever retail outlet they prefer to try to pick up that 50-inch TV for $150? Are we all going to have these super spreader events when we all go do our retail, or are we going to use BOPIS, whatever it was you just said, to go pick up this stuff? You know, is it whoever car is in line gets their first crack at stuff, or whoever bought it online can go downtown and pick it up next? I think that I just know too many people that love the experience of wasting their lives going down to some retail place to pick up something they don't need with money they don't have, or a present for someone they barely like, just to impress them. You know, I think that is going to be a real problem for retail, and I think I don't know how this solves that, but I think it does make it safer. So as angry as I was a few minutes ago, I do have to give your BOPIS thing a little bit of credit, that it's going to be a lot harder for somebody to catch a deadly flu sitting in their car rather than going into a big retail environment.
Pete, like I said, I'm a big believer in BOPIS. I want to show you something here. I got my BOPIS World Tour. Let me get it in the camera there. Hold on a second. There we go. BOPIS. There we go. BOPIS World Tour 2021.
I'm a big believer that this is why you leave the jokes to me. No, Frank Sinatra said it best. Only two types of people wear sunglasses indoors. Okay, that blind kid Stevie Wonder and assholes. All right, just take those things off. It's not a good look. Our television show is not most of your relationships. You don't have to ruin it for fun. It's not, you're killing me here. I feel like you just set me up for a Comedy Central roast. Oh, God.
Look at that.
And who does a concert sport T-shirt that isn't in black? That's another thing. And it's supposed to be a speed metal band, and that looks like something from a Hootie and the Blowfish merchandise table. Millennials, Hootie and the Blowfish, band from the 1990s. You really should check them out. Yeah. Doug, again, not a comedy writer. If I were you, I would take that shirt and I would burn it. Do not let anyone that you intend to have any sort of a intimate relationship ever see you wearing it. But really, I'm going to give you credit for going out on a limb and failing desperately at trying to be funny. It's almost as good as me trying to be serious. And with that, I think we should probably wrap this up. So
I think you're right.
We're going to walk away from the wreckage that is your joke. And I'm going to thank all of you for joining us on Global Trade This Week, brought to you by CAP Logistics. My co-host, Doug Draper, and I had a wonderful time giving you this week's opinions on some of the latest news and where we think they're all going. Oh, he's putting them on again. And we just can't wait to talk to you again next week with some more topics and some more discussions. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.